very powerful to listen to that in that place where for Reg, when he goes there, he gets a really good feeling because it has changed people's attitudes in all kinds of ways, and it's the people who are building it, not the government. The equinox is about, the autumn equinox. So we'll be coming up on it. It'll hit mid-September, so we're going to be about here. So we'll still be in here looking at all this, looking at the trails, looking at being told we can't have, being told that we don't have a right to want what we need, not for ourselves. We got a lot, some of this going on at my house. In that 2.5 weeks with their parents, and nobody else other than family who wants to spoil the hell out of kids. They had a 10-month-old little girl who is completely, suddenly used to spending the night with her mother and being carried around everywhere and told how cute she is and how wonderful she is. The only problem is now they're back from vacation. And we have a 10-month-old little girl who doesn't want anything except to be picked up and held and nurtured and told she's wonderful. And including not sleeping alone, to the point that she isn't going to go to sleep if she hadn't got somebody holding her. I mean, it's really kind of strange. Or her mom in bed with her. And so we got all of this stuff going on. Now there's also boundaries with Tommy, and actually he's better about those. But so, 6 months you pass this gate, and then you're into the, life is going to be different, at least in this white world. And so there's a lot of playfulness, and there's a lot of intimacy going on, and there's a lot of I wants. I want Mama to hold me, and if she can't find her, you'll do. It doesn't really matter to her. And she's going to raise holy hell until she gets what she wants. And so, I guess it was yesterday, people were out, Holly was, she put the baby in the baby bed because she needed to take a bath, and I was busy. She said, I'm really sorry she's screaming so, but I got to take a bath. And I said, perfectly fine, put her in the bed, there's nothing wrong with her. If she was tired, no, she can go to sleep. She screamed until Holly got finished with her bath and got clean, finished doing what she's doing. Holly went and picked her up. She was very happy, went to sleep. So this whole thing of the beginning of boundaries and the beginning of no's, the beginning of the definition of what you can have and what you can't. I got 2 kids sitting in that right now in my house. It's very interesting to watch. Because Tommy isn't over here yet. He's getting here. He's really probably age-wise right about here. Still to this business of who is he, and not quite old enough, but old enough and super bright. Now all of us, when we think about that, we look at kids, we don't really stop and think, okay, how is this a reflection of me? What is this about for me? What is this that happened that stopped me from being able to have this stuff? And then make this gateway crossage, because this is the hardest gate to cross, because it's the gateway of identity. And so what is this? Because this kid has got joy. I mean, we got a 9-year-old in the house who's just playing like crazy with these kids. A lot of the time. Other times he's off into his, whatever that, Playboy or Game Boy. And stuff that he's doing with his dad. But in the evening especially, these kids are running around, all of them with these toys that have wheels on them. And, Jay just running in the house isn't okay in his world. And I'm kind of laughing about the whole thing. But so there's this kind of thing going on. There's enormous amounts of joy at my house right now.
How old is Tommy?
Tommy is, he was 2 in March. So 2 and 3 or 4 months or something. like that, 28 months. And he's just beginning to show the signs of leaving babyhood into little boyhood. And he goes to daycare, which is really kind of interesting. It's helping him grow up some. So, this is where we are. We've just passed here, the 21st of June, which is the last workshop. So we're over in here, and we're dealing with ambivalence and betrayal, and can you have it, no you can't, and what does that mean, and what happens to you, and what happened to you. Now, over here is where you learn values and morals and that kind of stuff, but it comes over, this whole area is where that is. So you're up against your own ethical self. I was really up against that. I mean, you know, it's like somehow I'm so contaminant, based on external judgment, by the way, that I took on, that I can't touch something sacred. Excuse me. So I get to look at all that. All of you get to look at all that, if you, to the degree that you can. There's always another layer. This workshop, that's one of the, I read it and I thought, I don't need to change this, I just need to continue it. Because the other part of this, because of the way that this world is out here, that we grew up, there's a lot of do's and don'ts and shoulds and shouldn'ts, and you're not ever going to get there with that. You get there with softness, you get there with awareness, you get there with being tender, you get there with letting somebody have their space. And it's an interesting phenomenon. I mean, you know, just watching what's this unfolding with Jay. I mean, we took or actually, I needed to go down. There was a travel meeting this past weekend, so I took Jay and Lance down there with me. Holly and Tom weren't back yet from Alabama. And so when we walked in, you know, I just sent them an email and said, we're coming to the meeting and I have a surprise, we'll be there on Saturday. So I walk in, and now, you gotta understand something. Solly's his kid's grandfather. But Solly hadn't seen him either in that long. So he said, who is this? And I said, that's Lance. And Jake pops in the door behind him, yeah, it's my son. So it's an interesting phenomena, you know, suddenly the gathering. And last night when I fixed dinner, the one question Lance had was, when is Grandma and Grandpa coming? And I said, well, plans have changed a bit. So on your way back, you got to stop by the house.
Well, it just so happened that it worked out that I have a client that I can see Monday morning that's somewhere down near you.
Oh, how nice.
So we're going to spend the night somewhere Sunday night. And
Well, come over to my house because that kid is going to want to see his grandpa.
Grandpa.
And Wednesday is his birthday. So we're having a Lance birthday, meaning pizza, meaning a homemade white cake with white icing, meaning, you know, that kind of stuff. So there's a birthday going on in my house. And he's real excited about his birthday. So, that's what I'm talking about playfulness and intimacy and joy. We've lost sight of that. And, you know, I think Jay's having a hard time with it because you got 3 babies. I mean, Lance is 9, he's not a baby. But running through the house, pushing things, laughing at the top of their voice all the time. I mean, really laughing in pure joy and delight. Now, all of us who have difficulty, I mean, you know, me, I'm just kind of watching the whole thing. I don't want running. I said, calm down, they're just kids. They're just kids. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting to watch grown-ups. I mean, they don't know how to set boundaries. And they want to set boundaries around joy, around playfulness, and about don't put your feet on the furniture, and You know, all kinds of different, don't throw things, that's kind of, which are appropriate boundaries. But a lot of boundaries around this. What were your boundaries? What came up that said you couldn't have it? Your own spontaneity and your own creativity, because that comes out of here too. So we're talking and looking at this time of year and the changes that are coming. And then having a full-blown, I mean, let me tell you, I almost fell off the camp chair when I found out that Kenny and his wife and Joe and Judy, people from Arkansas, people from different parts of Texas, other people are all coming to this gathering. It's going to be a big gathering. A big gathering. You're really literally stepping into and watching what happens in a Native American camp. It's not the Sundance, but it's like the Sundance because it's just us living at the house, and all of a sudden some people are going to come, and then more are going to come, and then more, and then more, and then more, and all of a sudden you're going to have this whole big group of people all together in community. Sharing, learning, playing, working together. That's what's going to be happening. And then Sunday it's going to go away. And you're going to watch it. This group is going to leave, the next group is going to leave, the next group is going to... And it's like, on Monday it'll just be that, whatever that cool was again. And that's how it works. Yeah. I didn't really know how Tom and Holly were going to react to suddenly having not just one but two more new people in the house. Their reaction was, oh good, we like Jay. So Holly and Tom are both learning about community. So suddenly I've got a community in my place, which I happen to really like. I mean, I just think it's really hunky. I mean, you know, I got all kinds of things going on over there. And it makes my life much easier. It truly does. And it makes Jay's life easier. And it makes Holly's life easier. And it makes Tom's life easier. And it makes those kids' lives easier. Because there's more to share what goes on. And while overwhelming may be happening in a lot of ways, there's also a lot of respite in a lot of ways. And that's part of what you learn when you can make connection. Now, there are, prophecy-wise, out of the Mayan stuff, a lot of people think, well, 2012 means the end of whatever. It does not mean that. It means the beginning of a new time. Calendar reaches a close. But what that's about and what's happening right now is an enormous amount of pressure out of the prophecies. This is prophecy stuff. But if you look around, you can see it. For the power of separation. Around hate, around destruction, around chaos, around all kinds of things that are happening to try and prevent this transition, which is a little like saying, I'm going to stop a tidal wave with my little finger, because it isn't going to change. This is energy we're talking about. In the process of that, they're trying, according to the calendar, and I think experientially we can all relate to this, what's happening also is that there's all kinds of things that we can get hooked in that support the forces of separation. And our job in this is to master those so that we are more solidly grounded in ourselves. Now, I don't know how much of you are into astrology, and I'm not necessarily into astrology, but I do pay attention when I get messages across from astrologers and stuff. And I do know that that has a lot of good meaning for people who are mathematically oriented. I'm not, so. Mars is passing the closest to Earth as we speak at this time. It won't be this close again for 75,000 years. So that is shaking up all kinds of stuff. So we have all kinds of forces that can support us and help us with what we're doing, as well as that we can get focused on and use to separate us from what we're up to. So that's what, for me, this workshop is about, the ethics you have with yourself around connection and owning when you get off track. It is not that people aren't going to get off track. That's ridiculous to think that. I don't
You can
think that.
separate by that, you just get off track and separate from other people.
Or get caught in your own stuff. Like, I'm suddenly contaminate for the pipe, as if the pipe isn't this good creator, as if this good creator is going to have a problem with whatever darkness I carry, excuse me. But I promise you, if you'd seen me standing in my car that day, I was absolutely convinced that to touch that pipe was to contaminate it. And what Reg said in the circle when it all got finished, he said, this is not just mother-in-law. This was the pipe as well. And this pipe is reflecting what's been happening to other pipes. So I'm going to take this pipe and we're going to put up a meeting and we're going to pray with it. And we're going to bless this pipe. And I'm going to talk to the medicine about what's happened to the pipe. Now, out of that meeting, crow dogs, in some ways I'm doing one of these. On the one hand, I would love to go to Crow Dogs this year. On the other hand, I got work to do in Europe. Because at Crow Dog, there's going to be a weepy ceremony. Now I want you to know that of all the ceremonies, that's one that scares me the most. That's really sacred. And what they're going to do is they're going to put a pipe on that altar, and they're going to call on the great white buffalo calf woman to come and talk about what's been going on with this pipe and what does she want. And I'm like, so they're calling on the big guns, and the big guns will be at Crow Dogs. So that's going to be some weepy. And the truth is that, as foolish as I am, I really would like to be there. But to do that, I would have to not go to Europe. And I'm choosing my growth, because they're going to be really good people. And the truth is that I can pray for that, but my being there would be partly out of curiosity, and that is not a reason to go to that ceremony. Not that ceremony. Those of you who come to some of the ceremonies and choose to take in may do it out of curiosity, and that's fine. But you'll have a whole day to prepare. You want to come over on Friday evening, come over. You know, that's fine. Talk to people about what's happening, all kinds of things going on. But you'll be prepared, and you'll have more of a sense of what you're doing. I don't support people to go into ceremonies without some teaching. People talk, oh, I want a vision quest. I'm ready to go vision quest. And I'm looking and saying, well, okay. Now, are you ready for the year of hard work it's going to take to prepare? And then the year that it's going to take for what happened in that ceremony to integrate what you got? Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to commit to what that's going to mean in your life? Are you willing to commit to 4 years? Are you willing? I mean, there are serious questions that people, you know, and this is not a shaman's drum, come have a vision quest. This is not a shaman's drum, oh, we're going to go to Peru and do ayahuasca. This is not a shaman's drum, come and do blah, blah, blah and pay $300. That's not what this is. And what I'm really saying to you, this stuff is serious. These are heavyweights that are coming in who just want to teach. And you get to be the recipient. And I happen to think that's a good thing. So, that's about what I have to say about that. And so let's take a short break, and then we're going to see where people are. And I guess before I do, I should ask, does anybody have any questions?
Might wanna set the energy light candle.
Oh, well, we're gonna find out who's gonna do that here in a minute. I mean, that's where we start. You know, about who's gonna be the person to set the energy for the workshop. Because I'm really working to teach you guys to do that in whatever way that you do it. I think that each of you need that practice. I can set energies, I do that all the time. But that's not the point. I'm here to be your teacher. I'm here to facilitate the process of you guys working with your heart, with your intellect, and with your spirit and soul, to integrate those in. Because you're all healers in one way or another. You're going out into that world and you're doing all kinds of things, and you need that knowledge and ability. So, we're far enough along that I don't want to take that away from me. Unless I'm doing all the directing, then I'll set up. But I'm not doing all the directing this time. So.
Shirley, I'm in town this week and the following week. Yeah, it's
Um,
needed.
Lansdowne, California. Comes in a little plastic bag instead of
And that's your home recipe?
Huh?
Is that your recipe or their recipe?
But the statement, I didn't come here to learn to direct, and it's true, she didn't. But she did come here to heal a part of herself and get healthier. And part of that healing is about how to take a position in the world with some strength. And that's what directing is. It's all about leadership. Well, what does that mean? And what happens when you do that? You pay a price. And all of us, in one way or another, have paid some of these prices around what it is to heal. Now, when Holly, is it okay if I poke at you just a bit with this? Holly was adopted at birth. She came out of a chaotic pregnancy simply because of her father's death when she was in uterus at 4.5 months. And then some of the problems that happen with a 14-year-old mother who not only is dealing with what it is to be a 14-year-old and pregnant, but suddenly to have your life partner die. And nobody knows about it, that you're pregnant. And so you got to go through all of that and all the crap that went down about that. And what energetically Holly is carrying in the cells of her body around loss and around death and around being able to have, because of some things that happened during the birth. Now, she went into this family at birth, and she was adopted in at birth. But really wanted this baby. And so it wasn't like she went into a family that was foster and with abuse patterns of that nature. She went into a family that didn't have any kids, couldn't have any, and that later adopted two of the children. So there's an adoptive process in this particular family, but did belong to a religious cult that she had to grow up in. So in that family, to fit in, you had to be like everybody else. Forget individuality. There was a role clearly defined for women, a role clearly defined for men, and a particular way to be. Christmas was not celebrated because nobody really knows the birth date of Christ, so how can you have Christmas? Nativity scenes were not part of that whole process. So the framework of what the structure of her world was framed in such a way that was very rigid and very clearly defined. Now, came a point later on, I mean, and this all even involved who you married, when she began to say, wait a minute, I want my life. Whatever my means. In order to do that, before it was over with, she paid a high price. because they rejected her. They haven't shunned her, close to it, not, but they've rejected her. Now, whenever a person is claiming who they are, they're going to go through a period where, and especially this kind of a system, where you do that, and you start to claim who you are, just like that poem yesterday in The Journey. There are all kinds of voices that say, come back, take care of us, stay here, be here. And that stuff went on for a while. And Holly did what she had to do, and so they were hurt, and she did all these terrible things. She was, she did this and she did that, and in reality, when she really did leave, and then she found us, found the family. Well, we didn't even know she existed. And so everybody in the family had their own reactions to it, my family. When Julie, she called her kids together to tell them, because she was been divorced for a long time from her man she married, and that they had a sister. Well, they had their own thoughts about what might be. They were somewhat relieved when they found out that it was just the fact that they had another sister. Not that they have adjusted well to it, by the way. On surfacely they had, underneath it, not at all. And then we find out about it, my family. Now, Mike and Ronnie handle death, especially Bobby's death, in a particular way. It's like they don't remember him. So it's almost like he didn't exist. And now we've got his daughter, and Bobby existed. He's for real. Ray Charles is thrilled. And me, I see this photograph of this girl, and I burst into tears. Because nobody had eyes like Bobby, nobody. I mean, I've looked the world for people with those eyes. So, and then I find out her phone number, and I call her up, and we talk for a long time. She moves to Dallas from Phoenix. And begins to try and find out what is this thing called family. And a whole series of events take place over time, and now she ends up living in my house. Now, her family won't hardly talk to her. Her birth family. No, that's not true. Her adopted family. And I'm talking about this a little bit because the moment that you begin to claim your identity, all kinds of things shift. You don't fit in the family anymore. You are the outcast. You are the negative person who has dared to say, what about me? What are my needs? And when Tanya yesterday was talking about narcissism, she's right. We're very narcissistic. All of us are. We all think narcissism is a bad word. Well, if you're completely narcissistic, it kind of is. But there is also something called a healthy narcissism. It's kind of like the word selfish is a bad word. But the truth is that half of life is about what we need and what we want. Selfishness by and of itself isn't a bad thing. I want things for me. But I also am clear that there's this other part of the world that I also take care of and serve, and so that there's this balance that really is what people are striving for. Now, whenever you go through the process of healing, you're going to shift everything. There's not anything, if you really start shifting the underlying patterns, everything shifts. And there are people who can say, yeah, we want our health. We really want our health. And we want you to come help do this. Well, having been some of the roads, you go, maybe you're not so clear about what you're asking. Oh yeah, we know what we want. We want our health. We want to be a tribe. We want to be this. We want to be that. So you go, okay, and so you really go get an agreement. I even have it on paper. Everybody signed an agreement. Yeah, we want this. So I brought a whole team of people in with the Cherokee group. We committed to a whole year down there with them. First couple, everybody came, signed this agreement. They want their help. I have it in file at home. Well, most of the time, when people start seeking their help, they have no idea what they're asking for. They really don't. And the truth is that if we did, most of us wouldn't go after it. That's the truth. Because as we walk down that journey, we have beings that hang on to us. And we've got this, your piece last night, Pat, about this transitional place. It's really true.
Gauntlet.
Part of that transition is a gauntlet, and part of it isn't. You go beyond that, but you really don't know what's on this path over here. But you know what this is. And all these strings that hold you here, hold you back. So that what happens as you move past that and disconnect some of those, and you walk that gauntlet of being beaten up because you're wanting to be different, and all the struggles that you go through, most of the time, you're the artist of the gauntlet, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of us. Because we all have our own internal structures about what you should do and how you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to live, and how what your family's told you was going to be, and all this kind of good stuff that you have to not only, it's not only them holding on, it's you holding on. That's what the gauntlet is. You just beat the living out of yourself. Okay. And it is a bitch. There's no question about it. So it's not just out the external judgment, it's self-judgment. You know, it's not just what Tom, Dick, and Harry and Mary out there are saying, it's what the self is saying. How can I do this to my parents? How can I do this to my family? And yet you have something inside you that pushes you and pushes you because you have to have your life. In whatever ways it is, each one of us has to have our life. And we give it up when we're little. Because the gods have told us to. And that's our parents and our families. Now, and we have to do that. But when you get older and you begin to learn different things, and especially in an environment where health is a possibility, we have something that kicks in. It's talking in the New Age world, they talk about it as you wake up. The Native world talks about the same thing. You wake up. You look around one day and go, I'm not sure this is what I signed on for. And everybody around you, oh yeah, this is what you signed on for. You're my oldest son or you're my oldest daughter, and you're supposed to be this and this and this and this and this, and this is what you have to do to fulfill that criteria, and everything's going to be hunky. You're going to be a doctor. You cannot be a dancer, because if you're a dancer, you're going to die. You certainly can't make it in the world as a dancer. But you can as if you have a regular doctor. They really got it made. That's a good thing. I don't ever be hungry. Always make plenty of money. Have people's respect. We can brag on you. And after all, what do you mean needs? You got everything you ever wanted. So even if you begin to define what your own need is, you get to feel bad about it. Because after all, they gave you everything you wanted. Shouldn't you be grateful? Because you got adopted. And we gave you this perfect family. Now what are you bitching about? And it isn't, I talk about this. It isn't as if families are bad. We're not talking about bad. We're talking about families that really don't understand. And they've done the best they can to be, whatever. So they don't get it. They've got a life they like. How come you don't like it? Well, if you read Gibran, he has a part in that book of his on children. And they're not ours. They're just beings that are in our care for a while, but each child has its own destiny, its own pathway. And at some point, if there's got any health at all, they're going to kick in. Now, so there's self-judgment, and there's the judgment of others, people that we know. You're doing something wrong. And finding a new circle is hard as hell. Moreno wrote a book called The Second Psychodramatic Family. And it's really about two things. It's a philosophical book, and it's an in fact book about he and Zerka and Jonathan, because it was his second family. But he also had a psychodramatic family called the world. Moreno truly believed that we were all connected. I mean, he really did. And he also believed that if you had any goals for healing, that it could not be less than the whole of mankind, of humankind. And that if you had any less perspective than that, then there was something wrong. Now, in order to break out of our systems, and really the whole field of family therapy, I think, is what helped open this up. It came along and came into its own about the same time that psychodrama really started training people up in Beacon and that whole thing. And he really believed that if you were going to shift your pattern, you had to have a new family. And that family may be groups. It could be, but it had to be, and have enough health in it, that in order to make the internal shifts in here and out here that needed to happen, you had to have a second family who could support you in those shifts, because you were up against the energy of the entire system for generations. And at this point, with the systems work that's been done in family system, partly through Bowen and some others from the work that's developed since then, one of the things that we do know is that systems, the generations repeat itself, multi-generational work. Well, natives have known that forever. They all laugh at all this, quote, newfangled stuff that happens in this regular world, but okay. So, you get punished. You get punished by your friends, you get punished by your workers, you get punished by your family, you get punished by everyone you know, and stories pop up about people who are going to serve you. I mean, Mark was talking this morning about some of the stories around town that have gone on about me, about how I'm the channel, and you know, I worked with all this weird stuff. And he stayed away for a long time because of that, until finally he decided, well, maybe he'd go look for himself and see. Well, that's okay. I don't really care. Because sometimes I channel, and sometimes I'm New Age, and sometimes I work with crystals, and that's very Cherokee, actually, and sometimes I do all kinds of strange stuff. But the bottom line is that I've come out of a pretty firm grounding. But I don't need to go wave a banner out here defending, because it ain't going to matter. People have their attitudes and they have their beliefs, and they're going to shift when they're going to shift. It doesn't, you know, I'm not caught in that anymore. There was a time I was. There was a time that I didn't want to make anybody mad. I wanted everybody to like me, and I was bent over backwards to make everything okay. And I worked for the state when I did that. And somehow, through the guidance of some really good people, I got a little beyond that. And I was very determined about my growth, and that helped a whole bunch too. But so in one sense, as you're doing this growth, you lose your identity of how you defined yourself. And you have to redefine who you are. Now, I'm not talking about your essence. You get to look at all of those aspects of yourself and then make a decision of what you want to keep and what you don't. but you're gonna piss people off. You got friends that you've had for a long time aren't gonna be your friends anymore. Now, you were talking yesterday about this woman who's now dying, who's been in your life for 13 years. And you went in, and what you did is make a statement about yourself and your own system of beliefs, which went contrary to what she believed. And so she punished you. And you got ostracized. You got shut out. And it's painful when that happens. It's really painful. And then she finds out 2 days ago that not only did this woman do this, but she actively, and let me tell you, Native people know how to do this, went in and one by one disengaged all the heartstrings. Every single one of them that made the connections between the two of them. So that she was literally bereft and left floating out there without heartstring support that she'd had for a long time. And I think it's fascinating that this lady did this, which tells me she probably did it to other people as well, if they did not do things the way she thought they should be done. Now this woman is dying of heart disease. She's literally drowning in her own fluids because she cut herself off, and she actively did that. Control is not a good thing, people. When you try and control what happens around you, and you punish people, it is going to come back, particularly if you know exactly what you're doing and what it's about. Now, what Pat did with it is got about the business of creating her own life. But she had a choice. She could have collapsed. She could have capitulated. And none of those heartstring cuttings would have happened, but it would have cost her her being to do that. And people out in the world sacrifice themselves all the time for that framework because they somehow have to survive. Now let's talk about you a little bit, Mark. You have a situation where, and we've all seen it, where there's horrendous abuse out of your background. And then yesterday, thanks to Holly, we found out that you're moving into a new apartment and you're having all, you know, and after 20 years of survival, you moved into a place that's beautiful. It's being designed for you through a friend who's an interior designer. You're getting new furniture. You're changing your world from one of survival into one of beauty and where you're nourished. That's a statement of growth. That's a statement of leaving a whole lot of those abuse patterns behind. It's over. That's a big deal when it comes to that. And we'll all hear the very statements you had going in your head. This is crazy. You shouldn't be doing this. What if you're going to need the money for something? What do you think you're doing? You can't do it this way. No, you're supposed to do this, and you're supposed to, whatever the supposed to's are. They're supposed to's out the wazoo. And we all grow up with this idea, be nice, don't laugh when something's funny. You know, don't point out. I mean, my brother came in the house the other day, and he looks at me and he said, I really need a hug from a big fat woman. And I walked over. And it was just this wonderful exchange between the two of us. Well, I know I'm big. Why do I need to defend that? How can you say something like that to me? Excuse me, let's take a look at this body. This is not an anorexic body here. It is not. Maybe way deep inside, but hey, you know. And so we both laughed, and there wasn't any judgment. It was just, you know, I need a hug from this big fat woman. And basically what he was saying, you know, is I need your contact. Mm-hmm. On a really core level. And it also was a statement of growth on his part, because there was a time he wouldn't have done that unless He was sitting down having a very serious conversation. I show you. You know I really love you. And you know I really want you to, I really need you to live. And I'm real worried about how big you are and what you eat. And I see what you're doing with your life, and I don't know how you're doing that, but I really, you know, so there's just all this worry and all this stuff coming out, and behind that are shoulds and shouldn'ts. And it was just a pure exchange. A real statement of growth between the two of us. Because I don't get caught in that. I mean, you know, I'm real clear. One of the biggest problems I have is I really like this body. I mean, I do, you know. You go get any of the goddess figures, New Age. God, I like to poke at you. New Age stuff. You know, and if you look at me nude in front of a mirror, I look just like her. I just look like this mother goddess. Or I just think that's the best. I look at that and I'm so happy. Because I'm an earth mother. That's part of the energy I carry. The archetype part of what I... So I look just like her, and I look there in that mirror, and I just think, no, it's pretty good. The only problem is that I'm also looking at this other side of it. There's a price that I pay for that, called joints, called health, called a whole bunch of things that I'm really having to pay attention to at this point in my life. But also I'm real clear that there's a piece of me that's just brass punch. Here I am. I'm not about the business of hiding the fact that I've got a Mother Earth body. My breast kind of drooped, and my belly, and my legs, and my butt. You look just like her. Only thing is I got feet. Most of her daughters don't have feet. Now, think about that reality and the fact that I have trouble walking around on my feet. And so next year I'm having surgery to correct the pain in my heels. So I can walk around on my feet. And next year I'm having surgery to get a new knee on one side and maybe some work on the other knee. And I'm going to be able to stand on these legs in a different way. And I'm like, what is this about the shift in the energy pattern? What's going to happen to this goddess body that I've got here that I really, really like? I do.
Yeah.
You know, and down in Patagonia with the whales where I work, all those people have worked 25, 30 years with the whales. They just flat say, well, you're just a living whale, that's all. I mean, and they don't mean that as a negative. I mean, when I come, they're really happy. They're really happy because a whale in human manifestation has appeared and is going to help them with the whales and with them. And they're all getting healthier. And so they just, you know, I mean, we're talking now, this is real native stuff, you know. Real native belief system. I'm walking up. First time they saw me, Rafa told me, he said, I saw this big woman walking down the street. What in the world is she doing? Walking up to his boat. And Monica and they were going out to see the whales. Then the next thing he knows, they're talking to me and I'm talking to him. And he's whipping around and all this stuff is going on. And then gradually, all kinds of things started. Now, it gets to be interesting. I made a VIP room and all of it's where we work when we go down there. And they're real excited. I mean, you know, the car we drive up, they're here! They're here! Pass the word. And it's a little village, little tiny place, bit of nothing, really. This time, when I go down, I'm going to get to go in the kitchen and cook a meal for everybody. And I got 2 new grandchildren down there, just born this year. And they're going to wonder why I wasn't here, because usually I go in April or July, and I'm not down there right now. In fact, I got to call them. So we all carry the perceptions of other people as well as our own. And what do we want those perceptions to be? I can remember when my self-perception was that I was a piece of shit and that a speck of dust was much bigger a mountain compared to where I saw myself. Well, that's a life of abuse at that point. Guys, I don't have any abuse. I have respect. Now, there's a big journey between the statements, be nice or be real. A big journey. That's a long distance. Because we are raised to be nice. And it doesn't matter how nice we have to be. It doesn't matter in here what we think about that. Really doesn't. I have a really good friend, some of you have met, some of you haven't, named Dagas. Dagas once did a whole workshop on cowardice. What is cowardice? There's not much written on it, it turns out. Cowardice is really framed around the military, and people who are cows get shot. It's real simple. So he really got interested in this. What is a coward? And he came up with a definition, did a whole big presentation on this, about cowardice versus what is bravery. And a person is a coward who is a slave to death. Now there's an interesting thing about slaves. Slaves will capitulate and capitulate and capitulate and capitulate until one day they won't. Because they don't have anything else to lose. So something happened in each one of your lives, you had nothing else to lose. Fuck the way my life is. It's going to be different. And I don't know what I have to do. And that is the beginning of bravery. You stand up and you go do something different. And then you look at what's private and what's public. And for the most part, most of you, it is a little tiny private sphere that you have to expand. The whole process of expansion versus contraction. When you expand, people around you want to keep you contained because you're predictable. And everybody is in the same car, so to speak. So abusers abuse each other and they joke and they do all this kind of good stuff and everybody knows the rules and that's all cool. But if you start to change that, how do you do that? There is a no man's land on this journey of transition where you don't fit where you were and you don't fit where you're going yet. And you got to have people who can help you out. That's that second system who can hold steady while you do that. Now, all of us in this group have watched people go through all kinds of hell out of their early times because here they could be real about what they were and we could hold steady with them and say, go for it. It's all right. We aren't going to pull out on you. Yeah, right. You like everybody else. You're just waiting until we get so far and then you're going to fuck us royal. Everybody's done that. How come you're different? Well, you know, the truth is, you sure you want on Sally and claiming it for their own. That's what I mean. What I thought was going to be a simple little exercise around the room. It was like a bomb went off in that room.
That's right. Earthquake.
Oh my God, we were busy all day long.
All night long.
People completely freaked going into places they never even dreamed of going to. And in retrospect, I think it should have been done differently, actually. Sociometry needed to be tended to a whole lot more than what I did at that point. And so I claim some responsibility for this. The problem was I believed them. Now you got to be careful about belief.
Yeah.
You gotta look at where people are. Because people who have never really had any help and are making baby steps, you don't take them into giant steps. You don't. It was a hard lesson and one I learned well. We stayed down there for a year. We had all our meetings either at One Lodge, and then we moved over to Sally's house. The people, it was their farm, who wanted to grow, and then we came back up here. But the truth is that some of those people have really drifted away because the leaders continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones on the edge who really kind of wanted to grow but didn't quite want to do, and who wanted to, quote, be a tribe, but don't really know what that means, and who want ceremony but really want social stuff. They're struggling still with what that means, and some of them are part of it. But there's some who are really working at it, staying on the edges and not knowing what that means. So there's a shift in the foundation. You shift in your foundation, everything around you is going to shift, and in the structure. And that happens on an emotional level, on a mental level, on a soul level, and on a physical level, some of which I was talking about today. You know, and you all need to know that in some ways this scares the hell out of me. I mean, I've had trouble walking since I was a little girl. My knee has popped out of the place since I was 12 years old.
Mm.
I've had a cast on my left leg probably 25 times.
Mm.
And on my right leg 10 times. I mean, I have literally had serious stuff. I'm a master at working crutches. I know how to do that. I've had surgery. I've had all kinds of things happen to me around my foundation. Now, what happens if I stabilize my foundation? What is it going to mean to my structure? I mean, that really gets to be scary when you stop and think about it. It also is exciting. Now, what we know from research that's been done, actually over at the medical school here in Dallas, is the point in the brain that stimulates excitement also stimulates fear. The same point, just a matter of perspective. Don't ask me what the point is. Sheila could tell us, but she's having babies right now, so. But what happens is you begin this journey toward health, and you begin to move more and more into a sense of who you are, is that you carry a particular vortex of energy. I carry that. Each one of you are developing your own. We all have it. And part of that energy is controlled by the resonance. But the healthier you get, the more just simply walking into the room, you don't have to say a word, will affect everybody around you. Makes people downright uncomfortable. They don't know why. I mean, I walk into places, it's not uncommon at all, I kind of laugh anymore. People go, you know, when I first met you, you scared the hell out of me. You know, and people, you know, I go, really? Well, I hear that a lot. And I said, then after we're around you a while, we find out there wasn't anything to be afraid of. Well, welcome to the world of health, people. Each one of you are working in the world of health, and you're going to grow. And as you grow, you're creating your own vortex of energy wherever you go that's going to affect life around you. And that's going to draw to you certain things, and it's going to draw you to particular journeys and pathways, which are going to enable you to do certain things in your life. But you carry a responsibility. I mean, you know, I can say all day long, I want to hole up. But my vortex of energy, there's no way. You know, I used to, until 1995, I had my native world and I had my professional world separate. My spiritual world was over here. Few people knew I was native. They had no idea what that meant. And then I go to the International Congress in Buenos Aires. I carry, Crow Dog filled my pipe. He says, you take this pipe down there and you tell him it comes from the chief of the All Nations Sundance. Okay. I carried that filled pipe from the Sundance for a month. Oh my God. I forgot what all that would mean. We go down there, there's not only one chief down there, there's 7, one of whom is the son of the chief of the south, and brings the pipe of the south to meet with the pipe of the west. We have, August is the month for the Pachamama ceremony, which is an earthbender ceremony, and all these grandmothers have come from all over the south and created this Pachamama ceremony, and what's going to take maybe a half hour ends up taking 2.5 hours in front of 2,500 people from 65 countries, all of whom are in some form of healers. And we've got people from the west and people from the east who are also part of this little foursome that we've, Monica and me and I, and Miss Leonore, this woman from Zapata, created. It changed all kinds of things. The natives got to talk and people listened to them. And we'd set it up so that the natives and the people of Buenos Aires could come to this Congress. The natives could go to any part of it. The people of Buenos Aires were welcomed in the mornings and in the afternoon for ceremonies. The analysts had a terrible time with it. It's like, what have we done? Family therapists thought us pretty cool, psychodramatists did, you know, I mean, it caused its stirs around the different disciplines. But we changed a whole bunch of things with that. And all we simply wanted was one person to show up to honor that direction. It's all we wanted. People in Argentina didn't know there were any natives still alive. And after that, on the weekends, natives went to the park and started doing ceremonies. That was in August. In October in Guatemala, the Mayans came together, the elders, and said it's time for them to come forward and begin to start what they needed, and they called their journey the Trail of Tears. Then, a year later in Mexico City, no, actually at the same time in October, because we were on Mary's land, we were doing prayers and stuff there. And at that point, in Mexico City, 1,500 healers came together.